Your soulmate's ex begs, "Don't watch this video," but you must see what they finally admitted. Beloved, your soulmate's ex does not want you to watch this video. In fact, they are trying to get it removed. The video was uploaded earlier today, and within less than an hour, your soulmate's ex contacted the person who posted it and said, "Take it down." Then, especially don't let them see it. Beloved. Them meant you. And that is exactly why somebody who knew the history sent you the link. Not because the video contains some cheap insult. Not because your soulmate's ex is mocking you. And not because your soulmate is secretly announcing a wedding. The truth inside this video is far more uncomfortable. Because your soulmate's ex finally admits something they denied throughout their entire relationship. They knew your soulmate never stopped loving you. But that alone is not the biggest revelation. The moment that caused the ex to demand the video be removed comes when they reveal a question they once asked your soulmate privately. If they walked through that door today and asked you to choose, would you still choose me? Beloved, your soulmate did not answer. And according to the ex, that silence told them everything. But wait. Because the video does not end there. The ex eventually says, "I spent months blaming that person for existing in a relationship they weren't even part of. You. Then, the truth is, they weren't chasing my partner." Pause. My partner was carrying them into every future I was trying to build. Beloved, that is why the ex does not want you seeing this. Because for years, perhaps you believed something very different. Maybe you believed your soulmate chose the ex because that person was better for them. Easier. More beautiful. More successful. More accepted. More compatible. Perhaps you believed you had been replaced. But according to the person who actually lived inside that relationship, you were never replaced. And beloved, that does not automatically mean your soulmate deserves you back. In fact, what the ex reveals may make you question your soulmate even more before you understand what really happened. Let me take you back. After everything between you and your soulmate fell apart, there was a period when your soulmate desperately wanted to appear okay. Maybe they told friends, "I'm moving on." Perhaps family encouraged them. You need someone uncomplicated. You need a fresh start. Stop looking backward. Your soulmate tried. Then they met this person. The ex. And beloved, at first, the relationship may actually have been good. That matters. The ex was not necessarily some villain who arrived plotting against you. Perhaps they were kind, available, clear about wanting a relationship. Maybe everything your soulmate had once struggled to give you, this person offered immediately. Certainty, attention, consistency. Your soulmate thought, this is what healthy is supposed to feel like. No years of history. No unresolved arguments. No painful memories. No fear that one wrong conversation could reopen everything. Perhaps the ex noticed your soulmate was cautious. They asked, "Are you over your last relationship?" Your soulmate answered, "Yes." Beloved, maybe your soulmate believed that answer. or desperately wanted to? The ex asked, completely. Your soulmate smiled. It's finished. But beloved, finished and emotionally resolved are not the same thing. At first, there were only tiny signs. Your soulmate refused to go to a particular restaurant. Why? No reason. Maybe it was somewhere connected to you. A song came on. Your soulmate changed it. The ex noticed. Do you hate this song? No, then why did you skip it? I just don't want to hear it. Beloved. Small. Explainable. Then perhaps your soulmate said something in conversation. They used to say that. The ex paused. Who? Your soulmate immediately realized. My ex. You. Perhaps they laughed awkwardly. Sorry. The ex said, it's fine. And maybe it genuinely was. Everyone has a past. Beloved, remembering someone is not betrayal. But gradually, the ex noticed something different. Your soulmate did not only remember events connected to you. They remembered the way you thought. The things you would have said. Sometimes when making a decision, your soulmate would stop and almost smile. The ex asked, what? Nothing. What were you thinking? Your soulmate hesitated. Then, they would have hated this. Beloved. Again. You. Maybe the ex laughed at first. You talk about them a lot. Your soulmate became defensive. I barely mention them. The ex replied, that's not the same as barely thinking about them. Silence. Perhaps your soulmate said, you're reading too much into it. And beloved, maybe for a while the ex believed them. The relationship got serious. Perhaps they traveled. Met each other's friends. Maybe discussed living together. Your soulmate seemed committed. But there was one strange boundary. Whenever the ex asked about your relationship in detail, your soulmate shut down. What happened between you two? It didn't work. Why? A lot of reasons. Do you hate them? Your soulmate looked almost offended. No, the ex noticed how quickly that answer came. Then, do you still love them? Pause. No, beloved. This answer took longer. The ex remembered. But again, perhaps they did not want to become insecure over a person who was not actually present. You were not messaging. Not interfering. Maybe you had no idea this relationship existed. The ex told themselves, leave the past alone. Then something happened. Perhaps the ex and your soulmate were cleaning out old belongings. A box. Books. Clothes. Nothing dramatic. The ex found something connected to you. Not a secret love letter. Maybe something almost meaningless. A cheap object. A coffee shop receipt tucked into an old book. A tiny paper token. A broken keychain. The ex held it up. What is this? Your soulmate looked. And beloved, their entire face changed. The ex saw it. Maybe your soulmate smiled without meaning to. Then looked sad. It's nothing. The ex asked, is this from them? Your soulmate took it gently. Yes. Why do you still have it? Silence. Then, I forgot it was there. Maybe true. But the ex watched your soulmate place it back into the box instead of throwing it away. That bothered them. Perhaps later they asked, why didn't you get rid of it? Your soulmate replied, because I don't need to destroy everything from my past to prove I'm with you. Beloved. Fair answer. The ex knew that. But emotionally, they still felt something. Maybe they said, I'm not asking you to destroy your past. Then, I'm asking whether I'm living with somebody who still wishes their past had become their future. Beloved. Your soulmate went quiet. And that silence became the beginning of a very difficult period. Perhaps your soulmate insisted, I chose you. The ex responded, then why does every conversation about them make you look like I'm asking you to bury someone who died? Powerful. Your soulmate became angry. That's not fair. Maybe it was not entirely fair. But beloved, there was truth inside it. Your relationship was over. Yet perhaps your soulmate had never fully grieved it. They had moved directly from loss into replacement. And now the ex was living beside grief your soulmate refused to name. Perhaps they said, I need you to stop comparing me to them. Your soulmate replied, I don't compare you. You do. When? Beloved, the ex had examples. When we argue, you say they understood why you needed space. When I ask about the future, you say you learned not to make promises because of what happened with them. When I do something nice, sometimes you tell me they used to do something similar. Pause. They're in this relationship without ever entering the room. Beloved. Your soulmate was stunned. Maybe ashamed. They said, I'm sorry. And perhaps they genuinely tried to stop. No more references. No mentioning you. No old stories. But beloved, silence did not solve it. Because now the ex could sometimes feel your absence. Perhaps a special date approached. Your soulmate became quiet. The ex asked why. Nothing. But later discovered it had once been an important date between you. Maybe your birthday. Perhaps the anniversary of something. Your soulmate was not contacting you. But emotion still existed. The ex started becoming insecure. And beloved, insecurity changed them too. Maybe they began checking, did they message? No, are you sure? Yes. Perhaps, do you ever look at their page? Your soulmate became annoyed. No, maybe sometimes they did. Maybe they did not. The ex no longer knew what to believe. That is when resentment toward you began. Beloved, understand the unfairness. You were not involved. Perhaps you were living your life. Yet to the ex, you became the symbol of everything they could not receive completely from your soulmate. They thought, if this person had never existed, my relationship would be easier. Maybe they compared themselves to you. Looked at old photographs. Asked mutual people questions. What did your soulmate see in you? What did you have? Beloved, this became unhealthy. Not because the ex was inherently cruel. Because they were trying to compete with a relationship that existed in memory. And memory is almost impossible to compete with. Especially when your partner refuses to fully discuss it. Perhaps the ex finally confronted your soulmate one night. No shouting at first. Just exhaustion. Tell me the truth. Your soulmate asked, about what? About them. Beloved. Your soulmate sighed. Again? Yes. Again. Maybe the ex said, I need to know whether I am wasting my time. Your soulmate became serious. You're not. Then answer one question. What? Beloved, the question from the video. If they came back today, your soulmate's face changed immediately. The ex continued, and told you they still loved you. Pause. Would you still choose me? Beloved. Silence. Maybe 5 seconds. Perhaps less. But when somebody asks for an answer that should be immediate, 5 seconds can feel enormous. Your soulmate looked down. The ex's heart broke. They whispered, wow. Your soulmate immediately said, no, wait. The ex stood. You had to think. That's not what happened. I watched you. Beloved. Your soulmate tried to explain, it's complicated. Wrong phrase. The ex laughed through tears. No. It actually isn't complicated for me. Pause. If someone from my past came back right now, I would choose you. Your soulmate said, I know. And you cannot say the same. Beloved. Perhaps your soulmate's eyes filled. Finally, I don't know what I would do. There. The truth. Painful. Maybe the ex cried. Your soulmate said, that doesn't mean I don't love you. And beloved, perhaps the ex said something devastatingly accurate, I believe you love me. Pause. I just don't think I'm the love you compare every future to. Silence. Beloved. Your soulmate had no answer. That night could have ended the relationship. But perhaps it did not. Maybe the ex stayed. Your soulmate promised, I'm here. I want to make this work. Maybe they even became more committed. But beloved, now something had changed permanently. The ex knew. At least believed they knew. There was a part of your soulmate still emotionally tied to you. Perhaps instead of leaving, the ex tried harder. They became more loving. More accommodating. Maybe they thought, if I can make this relationship good enough, eventually the past will disappear. Beloved, that put enormous pressure on both people. The ex started measuring every good moment against an invisible question, would they rather be having this moment with you? Your soulmate felt watched. They started hiding ordinary memories because even innocent references triggered conflict. Maybe your soulmate became resentful. I'm allowed to have a past. The ex said, I agree. I'm asking whether your past still has a vote. Beloved. There. Perhaps the relationship lasted another year. Maybe longer. Maybe they even discussed engagement. And there was one particular moment that destroyed the illusion completely. Your soulmate and the ex were viewing a future home. Perhaps nothing final. Just looking. The agent or owner asked, what matters most to you in a place? The ex began talking about practical things. Location. Space. Then your soulmate walked toward a window. Looked outside. And quietly said, they would have loved this. Beloved. Silence. Your soulmate realized what they said. The ex stared. Who? No need. Both knew. Your soulmate apologized. I don't know why I said that. But beloved, the ex did. Because perhaps your soulmate had once imagined a home with you. And some part of them was unconsciously comparing. The ex left the viewing early. Later, the argument became enormous. I am not buying a future where somebody else's ghost gets a bedroom. Your soulmate said, they are not a ghost. Beloved. That sentence made everything worse. The ex became still. Exactly. Pause. They're still real to you. Perhaps your soulmate sat down. Finally exhausted. And admitted something. Yes. Beloved. Maybe the first real admission. Yes, they're real to me. The ex cried. Your soulmate continued, that doesn't mean I'm talking to them. I'm not. They may not want anything to do with me. But what happened mattered. Perhaps, I never figured out what to do with it. Beloved. The ex asked, do you still love them? This time, no lie. Your soulmate said, part of me does. Beloved. Perhaps that was the beginning of the end. But here is where the story becomes more complicated. Your soulmate did not immediately leave the ex to chase you. They actually refused. The ex perhaps said, then go. Your soulmate responded, no, why? Because I'm not going to turn another person into the solution to something I failed to resolve inside myself. Beloved. Interesting. Maybe your soulmate finally realized how unfair the entire situation had become. To the ex. To you. To themselves. They ended the relationship eventually. Not because you called. You did not. Not because you begged. You did not. But because your soulmate finally admitted, I cannot promise somebody a future while privately keeping an emotional door open to another person. Beloved. Perhaps that hurt the ex deeply. Understandably. Maybe the ex became angry at you. They thought, after everything I gave, I lost because of somebody who was not even here. But over time, perhaps the anger changed. The ex began recognizing something uncomfortable. You were not the person who deceived them. Your soulmate had. Maybe not maliciously, but by entering a serious relationship before understanding what remained unresolved. Perhaps the ex realized, I spent too much time competing with the wrong person. That is where today's video begins. Maybe months after their breakup, the ex agreed to appear on a relationship podcast. Not a celebrity podcast. A small recorded discussion about rebound relationships and emotional availability. Perhaps they wanted to talk anonymously at first. No names. No identifying details. The host asked, "What is the hardest thing you learned?" The ex answered, "You cannot love someone into being emotionally finished with somebody else." Beloved. The host asked, "How did you know they weren't finished?" The ex laughed sadly. "I didn't want to know." Then, there were signs from the beginning. Perhaps they explained the memories. The comparisons. The little object. Then the host asked, "Was the other person involved?" Beloved. The ex shook their head. No, pause. They weren't. The host seemed surprised. They never contacted your partner? Not that I knew of. Were they trying to get them back? No, beloved. Then the ex says something that is now circulating in the clip. I blamed someone who wasn't even participating. Pause. That was easier than admitting the person beside me was emotionally divided. Beloved. Powerful. The host asks, "Did you hate this other person?" The ex becomes embarrassed. For a while. Why? Because I thought if they were less special, I would feel more secure. Beloved. There. Perhaps they admit checking your photos. Comparing. Thinking, I'm more successful. I'm more stable. I'm here. Why are they still thinking about that person? Then, eventually I realized love is not a ranking system. Beloved. They weren't better than me. I wasn't better than them. We represented different things in that person's life. Then the host asks, "What finally made you realize the relationship couldn't continue?" The ex becomes quiet. And beloved, here comes the part they later begged to remove. They say, "I asked a question I already knew the answer to." What? The ex looks toward the floor. Then, I asked, "If they came back today and asked you to choose, would you still choose me?" The host asks, "What did they say?" The ex laughs once. Painfully. Nothing. Beloved. Maybe the room goes quiet. Then the ex says, "That silence was louder than any answer." The host asks, "Did they ever answer later?" Yes. What did they say? Beloved. The ex looks directly at the camera. They said, "I don't know." Pause. Then, and that's when I knew I was trying to build certainty with somebody who was still emotionally negotiating with a person who wasn't even in the room. Beloved. Then comes the line that changed everything. The host asks, do you blame the other person? Your soulmate's ex shakes their head. Not anymore. Then, actually, if they ever see this, I owe them an apology. Beloved. Your heart may stop. The ex continues, I treated them like an enemy in my head because my relationship felt threatened by what they represented. Pause. But they did nothing to me. Then, they didn't steal my partner. Beloved. They weren't sending messages. They weren't waiting outside the relationship. They were living their life. And then, the person I was with was the one who had not emotionally made peace with losing them. Beloved. That is the truth the ex now desperately wants removed. Not because it makes you look bad. Because it exposes how much pain all three people carried. Perhaps the host asks, why talk about this now? The ex thinks. Then, because I finally realized I spent years telling the story like I lost a competition. Pause. There was no competition. Beloved. I was in a relationship that should not have become as serious as it did before the person I loved had processed their previous one. Then, that was their responsibility. Not yours. The host asks, did they use you? The ex says, no, interesting. Perhaps, I think they genuinely loved me. Beloved. Nuance. They showed up. They cared. There were beautiful parts. Then, but somebody can genuinely love you and still not be ready to build with you. Beloved. There it is. Maybe a familiar truth. Your soulmate may have done something similar with you once. Feeling strong. Readiness weak. Perhaps the pattern followed them. Then the host asks, do you think they should go back to their ex? The ex laughs. That is absolutely not my decision. Good. Then, and I don't know if that person would even want them. Beloved. Then perhaps the ex says something unexpectedly beautiful about you. I hope they don't take this as proof they should run back. Pause. If my ex wants them again, they need to meet who that person is now. Not chase the memory that haunted our relationship. Beloved. Powerful. Maybe, they deserve more than being chosen because somebody finally lost everything else. There. That is mature. And perhaps this is precisely why the ex regrets the video afterward. Because it was too honest. Too vulnerable. Perhaps they watched the final cut and panicked. They realized people who knew the history might identify everyone. They asked for names and identifying details to be removed. The creator agreed. But then a short clip was posted. And someone recognized the story. Perhaps a mutual acquaintance sent it to your soulmate. Then another sent it to you. The ex panicked. They messaged someone, please don't send that to them. Why? Because I don't want them thinking this is an invitation to reopen everything. Beloved. That is fair. Maybe, and I don't want them hearing my apology through a video I recorded while emotional. But beloved, the clip already exists. You press play. You hear someone who once represented your worst fear. The person you believed won. The person you thought your soulmate chose over you. And instead of hearing superiority, you hear, there was nothing wrong with them. Perhaps, I tried to make them smaller in my mind because I couldn't understand why their absence still had so much emotional weight. Beloved. Maybe your eyes fill. Because perhaps during that relationship, you compared yourself to. Why them? What did they have? Why was I so easy to replace? And now the person you thought replaced you is saying, I never actually replaced them. But beloved, be careful. This is not automatically romantic good news. Because it also reveals your soulmate entered a relationship with unresolved love. That hurt the ex. Perhaps your soulmate needs accountability for that. Maybe you continue watching. The host asks, if you could say something directly to the previous partner, what would you say? The ex pauses. Then, I'm sorry I hated you for a story you weren't writing. Beloved. Maybe that line gets you. Then, you were not responsible for my relationship feeling incomplete. Pause. And if you ever wondered whether you were forgotten, the ex stops. Perhaps almost says too much. Then, you weren't. Beloved. Silence. The clip ends. You sit there. Perhaps stunned. Then your phone lights up. Your soulmate. Maybe they already know the video reached you. The message, I'm guessing somebody sent you the video. Beloved. You stare. Maybe you do not answer. Then another message, before anything else, please don't attack them for what they said. They went through something painful because of choices I made. There. Interesting. Your soulmate protects the ex from becoming your villain. Growth. Perhaps you reply, was it true? Your soulmate knows exactly what you mean. The question. If I came back, would you choose me? They answer, yes. Pause. Then, they asked me that. You ask, and you said you didn't know? Your soulmate responds, yes. Beloved. No lie. Maybe you feel a strange mixture. Validation. Anger. Sadness. Why didn't they contact you? Why date someone else? Why carry love silently? Perhaps you ask, why? Your soulmate answers, I was trying to move on. By dating someone? Yes. Beloved. Then perhaps, I genuinely cared about them. Important. I don't want to rewrite that relationship as fake because I know you now know I still had feelings for you. Good. Then, but I was not as emotionally resolved as I told myself I was. Beloved. You ask, did you compare us? Your soulmate says, yes. Perhaps that hurts. Constantly? No, then, more than was fair to either of you. Beloved. Honesty. Maybe you ask, did you ever almost contact me? Pause. Yes. How many times? Your soulmate does not romanticize enough that I knew I wasn't finished. Beloved. Then why did they not? Perhaps, because missing you did not mean I had become capable of giving you what you needed. There. Strong. Your soulmate says, I knew if I contacted you just because I was unhappy or confused, I might drag you back into the same pattern. Beloved. Perhaps that is one thing they actually did right. Maybe they say, I should have ended that relationship sooner. I should have been honest with them sooner. But I don't regret leaving you alone while I was still emotionally unstable. Beloved. Interesting. No grand destiny chase. You ask, do you love me now? Perhaps too direct. But after this video? Fair. Your soulmate takes time. Then, yes. Beloved. Your heart reacts. But the next sentence matters more. And I know that answer does not tell me whether we should be together. There. Growth. Maybe you ask, then what are you asking from me? Your soulmate responds, nothing tonight. Beloved. Perhaps surprising. I don't want their video becoming the reason you make a decision about me. Then, if we ever talk about us, I want it to be because you choose to talk to me. Not because the ex exposed old feelings. Maybe you sit with that. Then ask, why did they beg people not to send it to me? Your soulmate perhaps says, because they don't want to become the messenger between us. Fair. Then, and because they feel ashamed of how they thought about you. Beloved. Perhaps your soulmate adds, I told them they don't owe me protection from the consequences of what I did. Interesting. Maybe your soulmate and ex have already spoken after the upload. Perhaps the ex said, I shouldn't have shared that question. Your soulmate replied, you're allowed to talk about your experience. Maybe, just protect people's identities. Beloved. Healthy accountability. Then you do something unexpected. You message the ex. Only if appropriate. Maybe simply, I saw it. Beloved. The ex sees your name. Panic. Perhaps they reply, I'm sorry. You ask, for what? They say, for making you a villain in my head. Beloved. Maybe you respond, you didn't know me. I know. Then, that's part of why I'm sorry. Perhaps you say, I compared myself to you too. The ex is surprised. Why? You almost laugh. Because I thought you got the version of them I had been waiting for. Beloved. Silence. Then the ex says, I thought the same thing about you. Pause. What? The ex replies, I thought you got the version of them who loved without looking backward. Beloved. Wow. Both of you believed the other received the better version. Neither did. Perhaps that is the real surprise. The ex says, they were better with me in some ways. Worse in others. I'm sure it was the same with you. Beloved. Relationships are not rankings. Maybe you ask, Did they talk about me often? The ex pauses. Then gives an answer perhaps more mature than you expect, enough that I knew you mattered. Not feeding obsession. Then, but not in a way I think you should use to measure what you mean to them now. Good. Perhaps you thank them. The ex says, I hope you don't hate me. Maybe you answer, I don't know you well enough to hate you. Perhaps both laugh slightly. Tension releases. Then maybe the ex tells you one final detail that was cut from the public clip. Beloved. The host had asked, when did you know your ex was finally ready to let your relationship go? The ex said, not when they admitted loving the other person. Interesting. When? When they stopped blaming either of us for their confusion. Beloved. The ex explains. At the very end of their relationship, your soulmate said, you didn't fail to make me forget them. Pause. That was never your job. Then, and they didn't ruin this relationship by existing somewhere in my heart. Beloved. Then, I entered this before I had learned how to hold grief without making another person compete with it. There. That was the sentence the ex perhaps respected most. Because it finally placed responsibility where it belonged. Maybe you hear this and feel something shift. Your soulmate has apparently changed. But beloved, again, do not decide from the video. Watch the present. Perhaps days later, you choose to meet your soulmate. You arrive with one question, if I had come back then, what would you have done? Your soulmate looks down. Honestly,